Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Katherine Anne Porter channel. Hope everyone is doing well. Sorry once again for my rather long hiatus between videos, but I was thinking of an interview that Katherine Anne Porter gave in 1954, and I forget for what newspaper, but it was shortly after the Brown versus Board of Education decision that was handed down by the Supreme Court, which of course desegregated schools. And she said in the interview that thing was taking care of itself very well, quote unquote. And she believed the Supreme Court justices made their decision because apparently they were, quote unquote, ignorant of the true situation. That thing Porter was referring to, of course, was separate but equal, which Porter believed was working itself out very well, at least in the field of education. Data shows, though, that the equal part of separate but equal was definitely not working at that time. Black students were given inferior buildings and instructional materials, and many black schools were housed in churches, shacks, and lodges, and had no toilets, water supply, desks, or blackboards. This is why the Supreme Court ruled that segregation violated the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which guaranteed equal protection under the law to all people. However, Porter did say that it was taking care of itself. She didn't say that it had taken care of itself. Apparently, she believed that over time, things would become equal. And we'll never know, since desegregation began after the Brown decision, albeit very slowly. I remember when I was teaching in a high school in North Carolina in the early 90s, I would walk into the cafeteria, and all the black students were sitting on one side of the cafeteria, and all the white students sat on the other. I felt like I was kind of walking the gauntlet between the two races. And it made me realize you can legislate desegregation of schools, but there's still segregation within schools. There's also segregation in my classes, which I suppose I could have corrected if I had assigned seats like some teachers did, but I didn't do that. It just seems to be the natural inclination of most people, even young people, to stay within the comfort of their own race. And I consider myself the exception to this. When I was a teenager, I was always curious about other races and had a very diverse set of friends. I always said if I'd grown up in a plantation in the Old South, I would have been the kid always running down to the slave quarters or into the fields or into the kitchen to talk to the slaves until I was told, by my parents or my elders that I could no longer do it. I've always found it interesting, too, that in all the books or documentaries, at least that I've seen, about the turbulent 60s, they always focus on the white resistance to integration. But it's true that many blacks did not want to integrate either, and many of them didn't like what Martin Luther King was doing. They thought he was stirring up trouble. They were afraid of the backlash and afraid of integrating, obviously, with people who didn't seem to want them. And remember, King was stabbed in the chest by a black woman. If he'd so much as sneezed on his way to the hospital, he would have drowned in his own blood. So it wasn't just his eventual white assassin that he had to fear. Porter went on to say in that interview also that the only thing that makes the world interesting are the differences in nations and people. Why destroy that? She asked. Maybe it's not the only thing that makes the world interesting, but it is one thing. And since I'm a singer, I posted a few singing videos on my channel. I'll give one example of what I think Porter was talking about. Someone decided 20 years or so ago to get the best black rhythms and music and dance moves they could find, and decided to put a white face on it. So now we have Justin Bieber, Justin Timberlake, and many others like them. I don't think I'm the only person who doesn't like it.